Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're back at it again. Another series, another video. I want to introduce the lovely lady to my left. Um, she didn't say much in the last couple of videos, so I wanted to start it off with her.
So we're just going to talk a little bit today about the corporate world, why we both don't feel like corporate work is for us, and kind of how we left corporate, why we left corporate, how it kind of uh, helped us to see that it was not really for us, and the new perspective we have after leaving corporate, and kind of how it reintroduced us to ourselves. So back in 2007, we had our first baby, and everything was going great until it wasn't. We had some trouble with our postpartum experience where I was hospitalized 4 times, and it really had a traumatic effect on our family. I was forcefully separated from nursing our son and forcefully separated from my husband and had to spend a lot of time in a mental hospital. My husband had to raise our son by himself for those 4 months, and it was very traumatic for him. Challenging was a better word. So he had to really reach out for a lot of help, a lot of resources from the grandparents, and really was having trouble trying to just really be present during that time because of all of the stress of everything that was going on. I almost became a ward of the state, which would have been detrimental to our family. However, the Most High kept us. He kept us and allowed us to be restored, our family to be restored. And shortly after coming out of all of that, I was able to return to work. I returned to my job in insurance that I had been at for about a total of 6 years, right before I found out that I was pregnant with our second baby. And some time had passed. I thought I would be able to continue working, but I have hyperemesis while I'm pregnant. And so that means excessive nausea and vomiting. So I was throwing up 6 to 8 times a day for the entire 9 months. And when I was back at work, it was really difficult for me. And I was really starting to get really sick. And our midwife decided to give me a medical leave so that I could leave work again. After I had the baby and was ready to return back to work, I started to have some symptoms of postpartum again. And so I asked my job if they would give me an additional 6 weeks of postpartum so that I could get counseling. So additional 6 weeks of maternity leave so that I could get counseling and try to get help to try and, work through the issues that I was having in postpartum. And they told me no. They told me that because I had already taken time off and because I had some leave that I had used, they didn't have any more leave for me to take. And so I had to make a decision. I had to decide whether I was going to be uh, the rock for our family and stay home and nurse our baby and be committed to nurturing our family, or to just put my daughter in daycare, put her on formula, and move on with my career. But that was just not for me. One of the things that really showed me about corporate life was when I would see problems in the solutions that we had for the people we were working with, and I would try to make suggestions. I would try to create presentations. I would try to really help us to solve like the everyday trial and issues that we were having in that job. And nobody wanted to hear my solutions. Nobody wanted my help. And so I knew that my value was just not being seen to its full potential. And so the reason that I left was because I felt like, maybe I can go into business for myself. Maybe I can go back to school. there's so many other things that I can do. Maybe this corporate life is not for me. And so I basically ended up starting a business in photography and haven't been back to corporate ever since. I actually had tried to go back, but it just didn't work out. And it was pretty much out of just when he was dealing with work loss, like back in like 2012, maybe 2012. So then he started working 5.5 years ago for this company, corporate.
Yeah. Well, I started as a clerk. You know, they brought me in as a clerk and to take over the social media aspect of the store. It was a cannabis store, cannabis company, and it was rather a small mom and pop shop type of a deal. It was not like a large franchise like a lot of that you see nowadays. And the guy that was in charge of that, he was leaving to work in casinos, so they had this opening, and a close friend of mine who I ended up working with, um, he saw me at a corner. You know, I was working as a job coach for disabled adults, and I was in the Starbucks, and he was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" We kind of chatted a bit, and I told him, you know, I was in the middle of work, but you know, after I was done with work, come by and visit him because he lived around the corner. So I did just that, and that's when he told me about the job, and I told him I was interested in it. And fast forward, gave him 2 weeks at my old job, and then I went head first to being a clerk, kind of worked my way up. We both were clerks at the time, and changing management and ownership, we ended up having an opportunity to kind of dive into the management roles by taking over and kind of helping the new management kind of acclimate with the business and how to run it and all that stuff. And so it was one of those, like, we didn't train for it, we just learned as we went. And year passed and we did really well. We were doing great numbers for the business. My partner, he took on the front role as the buyer and assistant manager, and I took the back end role as an assistant manager as in compliance and inventory. I took charge of it, everything that was in the back end. So when it comes to receiving, making sure all the products that we're receiving were in compliance. If we're not, I have to send them back, generate reports for companies, monthly, quarterly, yearly, all that stuff. And everything went well, especially during the pandemic. We continued working. We found, within the laws, we found a loophole to be able to stay open and abide by the laws and regulations during that time. And work was really great. I was fortunate enough to still be working around the time where a lot of people were losing their jobs, and I was making pretty decent money by that time. And that was the first job I've had. Well, second job I had that was making executive type money or whatever you want to call it. You know, I was making a pretty good living, and looking back at it now, I felt like as good as it was, there was a lot of stress that came with it. You know, like I didn't really have that much time for myself. You know, when I came home, I tried to spend time with my family, my wife, and my children. But I was so burnt out by that. By the time I came home, that I didn't get to do that. So when I was at work, I was like, yeah, I want to be able to um, do all these things with my family. But by the time I was done with work, I was just that was it. Control Alt Delete, and I was off. You know, off to dreamland. You know, I was sitting in my bed for a little bit, thinking about maybe let's go watch a movie or something. And by the time I thought about it, I was already in my REM sleep, and it was like rinse and repeat every day. And the only thing that kept me sane was going to train jiu-jitsu. This is before I became a black belt and started teaching, but that was a crutch that kept me sane. Being able to train in the early morning, 6 o'clock in the morning to like 8ish, and I would go into work like around 9, 10 o'clock. So I was able to get all that stuff out before I went into a really stressful environment. And that went on up until, I got laid off December 2023. I don't celebrate holidays or anything like that, but it was like a couple days before Christmas. So a lot of people were like, wow, they let you go right before Christmas. Wow. I mean, that's corporate life for you. They can't kind of give you a sense of false security. Like, yeah, you're going to make all this money on this stuff, but at the end of the day, they really don't care. You're working for somebody else. That's just how it is. And now, 10 months later, I'm still looking for something, while we wait until our business kind of takes off. And I'm here finally getting some calls and stuff, but I'm like, well, I'm going to go right back into work for somebody else. And meanwhile, my beautiful wife here is a best-selling author. She's a speaker. She's a photographer, accomplished photographer. But, things are just slow right now. And as soon as when I first lost my job, I had this feeling that, based on what I did at the job before, the experience that I gained within the 5.5 years I was there, I was like, I definitely jump into something within this industry again, just right back in it. And it didn't work out that way. There was a lot of hiring freezes and people just didn't call back. It's not like the same type of corporate life that most people get into. I'm sure a lot of places that I've applied look at it like, oh, you cannabis industry. Oh, I don't know about that. And so I felt like I was stuck. And so throughout that whole process, I came into a lot of personal time within myself, kind of reflecting. And a lot of it had to do with the spiritual side that I was kind of neglecting while I was at work. We always kind of implemented a strong spiritual foundation, especially with the children. Like we do daily affirmations, a daily verse of the day. We read the word daily as far as like whatever the verse of the day is, and we kind of dive into it, and especially in the weekends. But it was more like a routine instead of really taking all that in. And because of that, I was going through a whole bunch of mess and kind of being kind of living in contradiction when it came to my spiritual health. So I was still doing a bunch of stuff that didn't align with the Most High, but I was kind of justifying it because I'm like, well, I'm still there, but not really there. And now looking back, I really see how much it hindered me and hindered my prayers and hindered my life, my spiritual life, as well as my physical life, And I know a lot of people deal with it and they kind of just bottle it in and just like, I'm gonna just work through it and it's gonna be all good. And really it's not, because you're just kind of diving deeper and deeper and deeper without even realizing it. And my advice was, I had a crappy day. Let me just go smoke. I'll be all right. And in the midst of being in that high, I didn't realize how much damage I was doing to myself. Like it's easy when you're in the business, you're trying out different products because you have to, for research and development. You're trying stuff out to see if it's going to sell or not, and at the same time, you're still enjoying yourself with your colleagues, your friends, and you're not really realizing the spiritual consequences that come along with it. And it was not until after all that's gone that I started to reflect, like, what was I doing? And I remember, like, I've said this before in the previous videos, like, I had taken a break, maybe like, I don't know, like a year or two before we lost our jobs. Like, I had taken a whole break, like a whole year break of no smoking and stuff. And it was not until like the end of the year, the holiday party, that I broke that. And from that point on, I went back into that same cycle, but this time it was a little different because I was using it as a crutch instead of really focusing on what was inside of me, what was wrong with me, and working through it the positive way. But instead, I was using it like, oh, I had a bad day. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna go smoke and feel better. And it was always temporary. It was always like 5 minutes after, I'm like, damn, I think I need to smoke again. My tolerance was so high that it didn't last very long. It was very temporary. And I used to kind of like, just like I was saying before, I justified it as I'm getting closer to God by doing all this. And in so many ways, I wasn't. I was moving away and away and away and away a lot more because I was going about it the wrong way. And like I said, I don't knock anybody that does it. I don't knock anybody that uses it or whatever. To each their own, but I'm just telling my story because this is how it affected me. And when you start doing a little bit more research, you tend to really realize what be sober minded really means when it comes to scripture. Like, it's a lot more deeper than that. Just the verse. It's a way of life. And when you don't have to use anything and you have a clear mind and you're not using any of those vices as a crutch, you're just clear minded. Yeah, you have more of a different mindset. You're like, wow, I was missing out, wasn't I? And I was, because 80% of the time throughout the day, I was under the influence. I was high all the time. So sometimes there's certain things that went by that I really didn't realize. And especially when it comes to the spiritual and emotional connection with you, when you have with others, sometimes you're so clouded that you don't really realize what's going on around you, or if somebody's really going through it and you have no idea because you're just, spaced out. And ever since then, since I've kind of let all that stuff go, I've been able to kind of tune in and really feel like I can tell when somebody's going through it. Not that I did before, but I didn't really look into it too much. I didn't really reflect on it too much. I was just like, oh, okay, whatever, Now I'm just like, well, I can tell when someone's off or someone's going through it. Even with my wife and my children, I can tell something's off. As opposed to before, I'd be like, oh, they're just mad at the game or something that they were playing. No, there's probably more deeper than that, And it could be with anything, really. It could be with alcohol. It could be with other drugs that I really never mess with. I never, besides cannabis and a little bit of alcohol every once in a while, I didn't really try to dive into anything else because that was just not my thing. Not everybody's the same. I understand. And every now and then I will dabble a little with microdosing of mushrooms. And even that, I really learned it's a really, really dark path, especially when you're tapping in artificially to the spirit realm. It can be really dangerous, really, really dangerous. I even tried DMT once, and I'll talk about that more in depth in another video because it was an experience by itself. And yeah, it's really deep. So I'm gonna leave it at that and talk about it on a different video because it's gonna need a whole different, like, I need some time to kind of break everything down. But yeah, I went from the corporate world to no corporate at all. And I feel more free than I've ever been. Sure, our circumstances are pretty dire right now. We're facing eviction, we have almost nothing to our name. We're trying to figure out how we're going to keep a roof over our head or where we're going to go, how we're going to feed our family in the midst of looking for work and all that stuff. But this is the first time I ever had to deal with something like this. And we don't really have resources or family to kind of help us out like that. So we're just kind of like, well, let's see what happens and hopefully things change. But for anybody that's kind of going through the same thing, I feel for you and I pray for you. And you know that you're not the only one. You're not alone. We're on this thing called life together, right? So we're going to live it to the fullest. To know that we stay strong in the midst of all this. You know, we've been together for about 20 years, been married 18, three wonderful, beautiful children. And in spite of all that, I'm still positive minded. And as long as I'm living and breathing, things can change. While I'm still on this earth living and breathing, things can change. I still have my health. I still have my wonderful wife. I still have my children. Like, things can change at any moment. But this experience kind of made me wake up and be like, well, it could be a lot worse, because in many other instances, it's a lot worse. A lot of people go through a lot worse than what we've gone through, especially in a different country. Things are way different. It's a lot harder sometimes. And they still find a way to smile it through. Through all the pains and the struggles, they still find a way to smile. And I take heart to that, because now that we're in our own situation, I'm just like, well, we have everything that we need, even though we almost don't, you know? And so the spiritual part is really important, because, and a lot of people, it's hard for them to kind of tune in and tap into that, because religion can sometimes kind of skew your path and your journey. It can discourage you sometimes, especially we've dealt with a lot of we call that church hurt. We've been to so many churches, and I've always felt kind of like
this is not for us.
This ain't for us. But I've never lost that faith. I never lost that feeling of that we're under the Most High's protection and all that. I've never lost that faith. I always knew He was there. It's just back then I didn't realize it was more than just a building. It's, you know, it's within you. So now it's much different, and I don't really preach a lot. I don't talk about what I believe to a lot of people, even my friends and acquaintances. I show them through my actions, who I am as a person. And yeah, things might have to change a little differently. I might have to share a little bit more on what my thought process is, because it might help somebody out one day. It might help them get through whatever they're going through, you know, more so than just showing people based on my actions. I'm always naturally giving to people. I'm very giving. I never ask for anything in return, just because that's just the person that I am. And my wife is the same type of person. You know, she'll go through everything just to help you out if she can. And she will never ask for anything, just because that's just the type of people that we are. And we're trying to structure that the same thing with our children. And we're just seeing a lot of the things of this world are, for lack of a better word, evil. So you have to kind of be really careful what you dive into, what you're about, what you're a part of, what you dabble in, you know, because that can really be a path to a dark side that you don't want to see, want to experience, or anything like that. So
stay guarded.
Stay guarded. Stay spiritually guarded. Now, I'm not talking about going to church. I'm just saying, have that personal relationship is really important. Yes. Having that personal relationship with the Most High is really important. Whether you want to say God, Jesus, we say Yah, and we'll dive into why we came to that. We go from the original Proto-Semitic Hebrew name. You know, yes. We really dive into saying the Most High's name from the ancient Hebrew text, not from the modernized, transliterated version. Not to knock on anybody, you know.
It takes scripture study and the Spirit to reveal it to you. So we don't knock anybody who says any of the modern names.
At the end of the day, the Most High judges what's in your heart.
Yes.
So if you're adamant and the way you feel Jesus is the word, then that's what comes out. And obviously the Most High knows your heart.
He can read that energy. Yeah. And it's the same energy regardless of the word. It's the energy behind the words. If your energy is on point, it's gonna hit.
Right.
If it's not, it won't. Doesn't even matter if you say God or Jesus. If your energy is not in that same, it's not in alignment with that flow, it's not gonna hit.
And I just want to touch into a verse that always kind of held close to me, and that kind of gets me through the day every day. Give me a second. Psalms 144:1, and I have this on my Instagram too. Like, not because I train jiu-jitsu, not because I feel like I'm a soldier or anything like that, but it's all encompassing in life in general. Spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, all that. Psalms 144, verse 1. Blessed be Yah, my rock, who's teaching my hands for fighting, my fingers for battle. That's such an impactful and powerful verse, because whatever is thrown at me, I'm ready. I'm ready to fight, especially for my family, for my loved ones, and even for my enemies. I pray for them. You know, I never want to wish what I've been through to my enemies at all. Never. That's just the type of person that I am. So in spite of the fact that people might have beef with me or have some sort of indifference with me or whatever it is, I still pray for them. I still, hey, it's all good. I hope they have a better life, and I hope the Most High can bless them the same way He has blessed me. And with that being said, thank you for hearing us out. Another episode of With Me and My Wife, Contently Aligned. Follow us, click, like, comment, share, and there will be a lot more. We'll dive into scripture and why as to we're the type of people that we are, why we believe in certain things that we believe, why we don't celebrate holidays. We'll dive into that later, but I just wanted you guys to kind of know what we're about, who we are as people, and a little bit of our story and how we got here.
And our motto is be content and then create.
That's right. Peace and blessings to all of y'all.
Peace and blessings.
And all praises to the Most High.
All praises to the Most High, yeah.